Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Joel Florek. Thanks for being on the show, Joel.
Hey, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Joel is currently 25 years old and has acquired a personal portfolio of 4 properties totaling 31 units with a valuation of $1.5 million, which he manages full-time. He has executed a number of low money down financing structures to purchase the portfolio, currently focused on bringing together investment partners to execute larger multifamily deals in Indiana and Michigan. I'm excited to have Joel on the show just because I know a lot of listeners are in the same shoes he's in, and just interested in hearing how he got started and things he had to overcome. And also congratulate him on just making this happen, at being 25 years old. But Joel, get us started and tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into real estate, and catch us up to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so it goes back to as a kid growing up in Marquette, Michigan. My parents, they kind of dabbled in real estate. So we'd move into a house, we'd remodel it, they'd find a new house, we'd move into that one, and typically they'd keep the old house as a rental. Eventually they'd get frustrated with the tenant issue, or something would come up, they'd sell the house, then they might get back into the rental thing a few years later. Both my parents had full-time jobs, but I got exposed to renovations and renting, residential rentals at a very early age. As I got older and I started to figure out, what do I want to do as a career? What are my financial goals in life? What are my lifestyle goals? That's a big thing for me. I really started to look at what other people were doing in the world of real estate, something that I was familiar with, comfortable with, excited about. And after really trying to look at kind of all the different niches, it seemed like multifamily apartment investors were not only the people who were able to achieve the financial success that I want to be able to achieve in my life, but they also lived the type of lifestyle that I want to be able to live. I certainly have no problems at all with working hard, getting my hands dirty, putting in the work and the effort. But at the same time, I want to be in control of my life. I want to be able to, have opportunities to, get out on the water and, do some long distance sailing trips, travel with my family. I have a wife and a young daughter that's going to be 2 years old here. So being able to have that flexible lifestyle is really important. So again, going back to looking out and seeing, hey, the people who own, the big apartment complexes, those seem to be the people that have the flexibility to live the type of lifestyle they want and be able to live, with the financial means to do it in a pretty fun way.
So what was your first property that you purchased?
Yeah. So right out of college, I started work as a program manager with a small engineering company. And I kind of took advantage of having that corporate income to go out and buy a 4-unit multifamily property. So I lived in 1 unit, did some renovations to the others, got them rented out, and pretty quick, right out of school, I'm living expense free. So that was a pretty cool feeling to feel like I have next to nothing for living expenses, especially coming right out of school. So I got that very early win, and then pretty quickly, as I was going through the renovation process, my carpet installer had actually given me a heads up that one of his other clients was looking at selling a 16-unit apartment complex. And I was a little taken aback, but when I threw out the suggestion that, I am trying to find another property to buy, I took advantage of the opportunity and got connected with the owners. And actually at that time, I had looked at a lot of opportunities to try and pull that deal together. Primarily, I was looking for investment partners to come in with me, try and do a syndication type model. Maybe not, maybe it's not true syndication, just a couple of partners in an LLC to be able to purchase the property. But I really struggled with that. Again, I was 22 years old. Very young, very, quote unquote, inexperienced in most people's eyes. Eventually worked out a deal where the bank would allow me to finance 80% through them. And then we got a seller second position mortgage set up for about 16.5%. Which put me in a situation where it's very low money down. We structured the closing on the first, had those rent payments go to the seller on that first month. So that was a nice proration off of what I owed on my down payment. So it turned out to where, I only had to put about 1.5% down in order to purchase this 16-unit property. And that kind of catapulted my real estate from this side hustle hobby of trying to create some financial success to, I have this real business. I mean, if it starts to fail, my day job can't support it anymore. It truly has to support itself. So that's when things kind of got, serious and also a whole lot of fun.
So you just got out of college, you got the corporate job, and then you bought the 4-unit, which it was such a smart move. You house hacked, which is a term I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, living in 1 unit while renting the other 3, which is just a great idea. I wish I had done that when I was your age, or that at 22. And then, but at 22, you're looking at that 16 unit and, and thinking about, oh my goodness, you said you it kind of set you back thinking, well, can I do this? Or, but, going back to, from jumping from the 4 to 16, tell us some things you had to overcome, or even at the 4 unit, how did you finance the 4 unit before we go to the 16?
Yeah. So the 4 unit, very fortunate that my parents were in a position to help me with the down payment. So we structured a small loan. I pay them 8% on their money, but they gave me basically $25,000 as a small loan. Could use that as the down payment, and they co-signed on the loan with me. We got a commercial loan with a local lender in the area. So, couldn't have done it without my parents that quick. I had a purchase agreement on the property. We were under contract before I even started my first job. So certainly if I would have waited maybe 6 months into my job, I would have been in a position where I could have gone a more conventional route for financing that and had been able to save up some money. But 3 weeks after starting my job, I had closed on the property. So we were able to move really quick, so that a month after graduation, I already had my first rental property.
I love it. You said you were under contract before you even started your first job. That's incredible. That's really great. So, but moving from the 4 to 16, tell us some things maybe you had to overcome. How did you? It sounds like obviously your parents were on board, with this decision to pursue real estate. But what were some obstacles you had to overcome that probably some of the listeners are facing right now?
Yeah. Like I said, number one thing was, going to the 16 unit. This is getting serious, right? It became a business. So I had to make sure that I had the numbers right. I was able to spend quite a bit of time with the sellers, understanding the numbers, learning from them. It took us about 4 months from when I first started talking with them to when we actually closed on the property. So it was a pretty lengthy process, and very fortunate that, they acted almost as a mentor to me as I, learn what it would take to actually put all the pieces together. Some of the things that I definitely had to overcome, though, was trying to figure out how to finance the thing. That was certainly a large challenge in my eyes at the time. Again, I reached out to a lot of people who had money in my network, who had experience in real estate, but didn't want to kind of do the day-to-day work anymore. And while they all were excited and, thought it was a pretty good deal, I kept running into issues where they wanted all the deal and, basically wouldn't leave me with much of anything. So it would be a situation where I would have had to do a lot of work, to ultimately not be able to get much at all. And keep in mind, I didn't have a ton of capital to be able to put into that. So going with more of a traditional finance, 20-25% down, I wouldn't have, much skin to be able to put in the game, with any investors at the time. And again, I was managing a rental property for 10 months at the time, 8 months, when those conversations started. So it's not like I could show them a track record and put together a business plan and say, hey, I'm confident I can execute this. And here's my track record that should provide you with confidence that, I can execute the plan. So that was certainly a challenge, and I didn't overcome it. But thankfully, we found a different route with doing the seller second position mortgage. And ultimately, that's kind of been the big thing that I've focused on is building up my own portfolio, building up my track record, creating a plan, showing that I can execute my plan, so that, years later now, I can put myself in a position where when I have conversations with potential investors on deals that I want to do in the future, the conversation is much different today than it was back when I was 22 years old. Now I'm somebody that has experience that people have a little bit more faith in, and they're more comfortable, actually talking about, taking the next steps and moving forward.
So what is your business plan moving forward now, Joel? Now that you've done this deal and you've got 31 units total, so is there another property also, I assume?
Yeah. So I picked up those 20 units pretty quick in that first year. It was about 18 months before I did my next deal. I had actually moved down to Indiana, left my job. I picked up a 3-unit. And then picked up an 8-unit. We structured in the same way as that 16-unit with a seller second position. So it's been 3.5 years now since I bought my first property. And, ultimately my goal is to, be somebody who manages a team that is in charge of, 100, 200 unit apartment complexes. I love real estate. I love being able to tackle big, challenging problems. That's really where I want to get to in my investing, not necessarily having to do all the day-to-day tasks that I have now, with a smaller portfolio.
So why move towards syndication? Why not just keep doing, like you're doing and buying a fourplex or another 16 unit?
Yeah. So, from all the conversations that I've had with banks, with other investors, and with those who are going and tackling the types of deals that I want to go after, the real creative financing structures that I'm able to do on some of these smaller deals start to not be as practical when you're tackling these larger projects. So ultimately, there's kind of 2 routes that I can take from what I've put together. Either one, I can keep tackling slightly bigger and slightly bigger deals, basically using the income from my portfolio, putting it back in, and kind of doing that slow growth model over the next 5-10 years to the point where, hey, now I'm in a position where I can go tackle those deals. Or I can shift focus and I can say, hey, let me bring in some folks who have the same types of goals of being invested into multifamily real estate, but they don't necessarily have the ability or time or desire to do kind of the day-to-day operational work that I really love doing. Why not bring them together and be able to go tackle these deals as a team? So that way, over the next 2-3 years, I can put myself in a position to be able to do, the bigger deals that I want to be able to do. So 2019, the goal is really, go out and find something in the $1 to $3 million range in Indiana or Michigan that I can tackle with a team of investors. So for 2019 to be a success, got to be able to knock out one of those projects.
Yeah, and you're going to raise capital and do a syndication, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, looking back and obviously moving forward to, doing a larger deals, you've gained a lot of experience, through these other properties. That's obviously going to help you moving forward. Tell us some things about your experience, some key points that have helped you to be more prepared moving forward to do larger deals.
Yeah, the first step in any real estate deal is obviously, broker relationships, hustling to find opportunities, analyzing the deal and making sure you're not buying something that doesn't have the ability to turn into something successful. So that's step one, and anybody can learn that stuff, but the hard part, in my opinion, is the operational day-to-day work that it takes to execute your plan over the long term, because this really is a long game. Especially when you start getting into the bigger properties. And if you do a great job in adding value to your portfolio, increasing your NOI, that's where you really start to see some phenomenal gains with respect to the returns on the money you're investing into the deals. So one of the things that I focus on is kind of a 3-part framework for any type of money that I'm going to invest back into my deal. So the first part that I always focus on is have money coming in. Get money coming in the door right away. And the easiest way to do that is get units rented out. If you have vacant units, do what you have to do to get those things in a condition where you can rent them out and get that income coming through the door. If you have tenants that aren't paying, you got to get them out, and you got to get paying tenants, living in that unit. The second thing that you want to focus on is maximizing your NOI. Focus on your highest ROI projects first. That might be interior unit renovations. It might be cleaning up the exterior, painting and landscaping. It may simply be get tenants out that aren't willing to pay and get higher paying tenants in. You might not have to spend a bunch of money on your property. So really look at, where your property stands in the local marketplace, and kind of put together, your list and try to figure out where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, and focus on that. And I think it's amazing how much you can do to increase your NOI without spending nearly as many dollars as you think you have to spend. The
Just
third
by better
part,
management.
yeah, exactly. And again, thinking about interior renovations, it's not necessarily renovating the entire unit. Can you go in and just repaint, throw in new floors in the living room, and maybe switch out appliances, and that's good enough? Or you don't necessarily have to do full bathroom renovations, full kitchen renovations, because those projects might not have nearly as high of an ROI as the smaller renovations. So I like to, take smaller steps first to kind of de-risk the overall project, rather than kind of going all in and saying, hey, we're doing this great, big, gigantic renovation, and here's what we expect the results to be. No, let's take step one first, and let's get that. Now we're going to, switch to step two. If we run into issues along the way, you put yourself into a much better position to keep, the project on track. And then the third part of that framework is really de-risking your investment over the long term. So this might be adding certain amenities that can increase, how you stack up against your competition. So if the economy takes a dive, you're able to compete against your competitors. So residents are going to be more willing to stay or move to your unit as opposed to another property. It might not change the rental rates, but it might provide a more stable property for you. And it might be something like cutting down trees that are, leaning over the parking areas or the building that have a potential to fall on your property and create a huge issue for you. That's certainly not going to affect your NOI on a annual basis, but it de-risks your property in the instance of, a storm coming through. So that's, kind of an example of the third area that I really look at as important, but often overlooked. And every property kind of has its kind of unique, aspects to it.
Can you give us an example where you've done that to one of your properties as far as the de-risking the investment or adding some type of amenity?
Yeah. So on my 16 unit, there's actually a pretty large issue with water in the parking area. So drainage has been a problem in the past. And I knew that when I purchased the property. Most of the times it's not a big deal, but when we have an instance like we have now, where we've had years of snow and rainfall that's above average, the water table is very high. That's causing an issue where our retention pond is, there's a holding tank underneath that's full all the time. It never drains down. So when we get, 3 inches of rain in an hour or a 2-hour period, the parking area floods and it gets really close to 2 of the units. It's unlikely that it's ever going to flood into the unit, but it's darn close. So actually one of the things we're doing this spring is we're going to be doing some changes to the entryway, so that way we can create kind of an emergency overflow to curl around the property. We're going to expand our retention pond, and that's going to significantly reduce the chances of ever having an issue of flooding. And kind of in conjunction with that, we excavated another area of the property to change where we're moving our snow in the wintertime, because in the spring, our snow was piling up where a retention pond was, and that was preventing water from actually being able to get in the retention pond. It was just kind of pooling into the parking area, something the previous owner never really worried about. But it's something that I feel is really important to ensure that I never have a unit that gets flooded from this. And I think, as we fix this problem, I think we're going to do a much better job with getting tenants to feel more comfortable living at the property long term.
Joel, from where you are right now in your syndication journey, or moving forward, what's the number one thing someone can do right now to improve their syndication business or their real estate business?
I think certainly if you're looking at getting into it, I think experience is really important. Being able to talk about specific challenges that you've had to deal with in real estate, as well as your wins, that goes a long way. So even though compared to the industry, I'm very young, when I start having conversations with people, I'm still able to dive into the details and be able to have valuable conversations, and really quickly that kind of, changes the tune. Another thing that I'm doing is taking a cue from Jake and Gino. I'm putting together a credibility book on my portfolio. So I've detailed some examples of my properties, how they've done, from a financial performance, as well as putting together some sample underwriting on some deals that I would have loved to have picked up, But at the time, I didn't have the network to be able to go and tackle those deals. So I think that's something that is going to be really valuable. And I know just, in the last month or so since I put together that credibility book, the conversations that I've been able to have, with people who are interested in working with me, it's really improved where I think we're at in kind of the relationship to be able to do deals together in the future.
So Joel, what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success and really, getting started, at such a young age, what's the one thing that's contributed to that success?
I really think it's having a clear vision of what you want to do. Where do you want to go with your financial success, with your lifestyle, and with the type of work that you want to do. The route that I have gone in real estate investing is not for everyone. It's certainly not, but I don't mind getting my hands dirty. And I think it's been really important for me to be able to kind of build up that experience, so that I can be able to go after some of the bigger deals. But through all of it, I've had a very clear vision that, hey, I want to get to the bigger real estate deals. So I have turned down, countless opportunities for, house flipping or wholesaling or, job offers that have, been presented to me. I've turned a lot of that down because I do have this very clear vision of, here's where I want to get. And, here's this path that's very realistic on how I can, go ahead and get myself there.
Joel, thank you so much for your time, and you've been a great guest. And I know a lot of the listeners can relate to your story and your path, and can follow in your footsteps. And tell the listeners how they can learn more about you and your business.
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's jfhcapital.com. That'll give you a little bit more info on myself and what I'm working on. I'm on Bigger Pockets. You can reach out to me, joelflorek@gmail.com as well.
Awesome. Thank you again, Joel. And I appreciate the listeners being with us today. I hope they'll reach out to Joel, and I hope you'll connect with me at lifebridgecapital.com and schedule a call. And I hope you'll go to our Facebook group so we can all learn from experts like Joel, and we can all ask questions and grow our business together. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.